Welcome to week 1 of evidence-based practice. In evidence-based practice, what we do is literally find the evidence to help support why we do what we do, or our practice. The assignment you do this week sets the tone for the next 14 weeks in this class, as you'll be working on a continual project that builds within itself. So if you look down, it's always good to look at the concepts as well as the unit outcomes for any assignment. As you look down at the description, you'll see you're going to start looking at different topics involving social determinants of health. If you're unfamiliar with what a social determinant of health is, or why that would be applicable to you as a nurse, a social determinant of health gets into some of the environmental factors and social factors that determine health outcomes for individuals as well as populations. This is a really large focus nationwide as far as trying to see how to best help communities achieve optimal health. It also affects individuals. In addition to it being a national initiative, and if you look down a little bit, you can get to a link specifically to the Healthy People 2020 initiative that has to do with social determinants of health. But this is also a focus along the Wasatch Front and throughout Utah, and you can see specific social determinants of health here, including the fact that average life expectancy varies over 10 years depending on which city you live in within Utah. Now, this is a large initiative that's taking place and that will be rolling out soon through all Intermountain as well as other partnered health facilities, where instead of only looking at conditions as a person is admitted, that looking at these social determinants of health can help prevent certain conditions, can help prevent certain injuries. So if you think, for example, if there was a broken step outside and 5 people came in and each one tripped over the step, and one sprained their wrist and one twisted their ankle and one hit their elbow, instead of just treating each of those injuries, eventually someone needs to go out and fix the step to prevent further injuries. That's a large simplification for what a social determinant of health is, but it's the same idea. It's called upstream thinking. So looking at some of these factors that affect people socially. There's a video here, it's fairly brief, just about 5 minutes long. That'll give you a little more context as well. There are what are known as primary and secondary social determinants of health, and whether one is primary or secondary right now is not in as much concern for what you need to be doing. But you'll be reviewing this content here this week, which again, this is the Utah Social Determinants of Health. This is the national initiative, and then this brief video that summarizes and gives you a few examples as well. Then you're going to specify a social determinant of health from the list below that you feel influences the health in your community, and one that would be interesting to you. So, in varying degrees, these affect most communities, but at this point, you're just going to choose one of these umbrella social determinants. So, interpersonal violence, education, food insecurity, family and social support, utility needs, income and employment, housing instability, health behaviors, and transportation. And in that, you're just going to identify for us which one of those you would like to focus on. And you'll get more specifically focused within those as you go, but just right now, which of these categories is of most interest to you? And then where could you find evidence to learn more about this social determinant of health? Are there community partners? Could you learn through schools, reputable websites? Are there journals that are, address these different things? In an interdisciplinary team, for example, if you chose education, other ways that you could learn and find more evidence about the social determinants of health would include looking at things through school districts and through teachers, that type of thing. The third part isn't exactly related to social determinants of health, but it gets more into why it's important to find reputable information to use as your evidence. So a lot of times, particularly in social context, there are claims made that are not particularly accurate. And in those, that's what we call a spurious correlation. So a correlation is a relationship between two things. And what we're doing is we're looking at the relationship between different environmental factors and individual or communal health. But sometimes you can run across what's known as a spurious correlation, which means there are two things that look like they go together, but aren't actually truly linked together. So you're going to be going to a website. The link, of course, is right here. And when you go to that, you will come over to the spurious correlation page. There's a lot of them. So, for example, U.S. spending on science, space, and technology correlates very closely with suicides by hanging, strangulation, and suffocation. Now, all of these are actual data sets. These aren't made-up data sets, but obviously the relationship between these, although it looks like they correlate very strongly together, is a spurious correlation. It's just kind of happenstance. What you'll be doing, and there's a lot of very entertaining ones to look through, you'll be going down and creating your own spurious correlation. So at the very bottom, let me scroll this over just a little bit, you will go to discover a correlation. You'll choose a variable. So let's just choose marriage rates. I encourage you to look through these a little bit more carefully, but I'll go with marriage rates in Colorado. And then you're going to go through and find things that correlate with that. So I'll just put drivers killed in collision with train, or with a railway train. And what it'll do is it'll present a correlation. Some of them track very closely, some of them are not as strongly correlated. But you're going to tell us what two things you correlated, and then this is a point where you get to use a little creativity. I know some of you, this may be your strong point, and for others of you, you may not feel as creative. But what you're going to be providing in your assignment is a justification for why this is absolutely a thing. So why would marriage rates in Colorado coincide and correlate with drivers killed in collision with railway train? The more creative the answer within appropriate bounds, the better. So you'll be going in and doing a spurious correlation, and then providing us with a creative explanation for that correlation. And that is everything that you need to do for the assignment for this week.